welcome back to Wicked Art. It's Wicked here, and it's Wednesday, so we're going to start doing digital art tutorials on Wednesday. So, if you want to, um, you can literally you just take a screenshot of this, okay, and then you can upload it into the computer. So, I'll show you how to do that. So, the first thing you want to do when you're bringing in an image is you just hit this Add Image button, okay. So I can add my image in and I can shrink it down just like that. So if you want to take a screenshot of that real quick and do the same thing, again, once you take that screenshot, go to add image and just add it in. Now I'm going to drop this down below that layer, and then what we're going to do is we're going to turn the opacity down, okay, just so that we can draw over the top of it. Okay, so I'm going to switch to black by coming down here to the bottom. If you don't see this color editor thing, if you just go up to Window and find Color Editor Tool, Layer Editor Tool, and Brush Library. That's what you need to have pulled up. Okay, so we are going, so look, something I want to show you real quick is this felt tip pen. Don't really use that for this. I usually just go in and use the regular paintbrush. Okay, so see how I can get me a nice good line. So what I'm going to do is hold my space bar down. I'm going to zoom in. Okay, I'm going to adjust the size of my brush to make it thick enough, and all I'm going to do is go around and trace my image. The other thing I'm going to focus on are these big heavy black lines in the image. Those are going to be my kind of shadows. So we're going to do kind of like a comic book shading, so I want to make sure that I make them just as thick as what's in the drawing. Okay, so I'm going to just continue around and we're just going to shape it up. So see how I hold the space bar, it brings up the zoom. I can also pan that way. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to go around trace. Now some of these lines are thinner, so I can shrink it back down to like a 0.9. To get those thinner lines, and then I can go back up to like a 2 to come in here and get those thick areas. Okay, so I'm just going to switch back and forth on the areas that I need it on. And you can leave that up to yourself. It's not going to be, now if you want to go back, you hit Command or Control Z depending on if you're on a Mac or a PC. But I am just going to go around my image and just keep working those lines in. Okay, and once you do it enough, you'll get used to your personal tastes and preferences as to what you want your image to look like. As far as like what areas you want to be bigger than others, it'll be completely up to you. So like all this area down in here is pretty thick with the black lines that I made. So we're going to keep that the way it is. And then again, just switching back and forth to ensure that I get the desired result. Okay, So it's a little bit of a time consuming process. And what I might do is I might start like linking Monday's tutorials with these Wednesday ones, so you guys can just upload the images that we've already drawn together. That way you're not having to take the screenshot. Now these here, these holes are just black anyway, so I'm just going to fill those in. Okay, and then just continue to go around. Like I said, it's a little bit of a process. So this first one might be kind of a longer video, but that's okay. I want to keep that kind of a real-time theme going for you guys. And again, just these holes up here at the top, they're just solid holes anyway, so we can just fill them in that way. Now most people would think you could just take this image and just color over the top, which you can if you wanted to keep that kind of paper shading feel to it. That'd be a good reason for that. But me, I'm gonna do a different approach, and we're gonna use the shadows that we have to help us build up our image as far as the shading goes. Okay, so we're gonna get through this. And what I'll do to save some time for you guys so that you can just, you know, kind of still work at your own pace, what I'll do from this point is I'm just going to speed up the video just a little, just so you don't have to sit here and watch me trace the whole thing. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and speed up, and I will stop and go slow in a few minutes so we can get back on it. Alright, see you in a minute. Alright, so now we have our outlines and everything put in. Missed a little spot right there. Just kind of go over and look at different things real quick before we move on. Like, I missed this spot here. Okay, everything else seems to be okay. So what we can do for now is we can just simply turn off the eyeball for the bottom screen down here. Okay, so now we have a nice image. It's fully connected, and we can come down here and click on this layer we shut off and hit the plus button. That's going to add a new layer. So to help you keep track, we're going to click in these little dots, come back up here to layer 1, come over, hold down, and come over to the A. Just call it lines. Okay, now we're going to come down here, just layer, and we're going to call it base color. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is I can come up here in my selection tool, right? I can pick this magic wand, pick my lines layer, and select. Okay, so now it has selected all this, but if I start coloring, it's only going to color the outside. I need to hit this inverse button. Okay, I'm going to come back down here to my base colors, and we're just going to do random colors. So I'm going to go for kind of like a red orange here. Okay, I'm going to have my brush selected, and I'm just going to go in here, and I'm just going to start painting in. Now what we want to do is, let's real quick go to lines, switch it to multiply. Okay, and then let's come down here again and make sure we're back in the right line. What that does is that just keeps those lines nice and dark when we paint over the top of them. So you can choose whatever color you want for this helmet. Just kind of work along the same strategy. So these base colors, you can pick whatever you want. The shadow thing we can do together and it'll work. Okay, so now I have my red. Okay, now I know I want this kind of a green color inside the helmet here. Okay, now just make sure you're careful. So if I hold down the space button, I can zoom in. You can see how I'm kind of going outside the line a little bit, and that's okay. If you just hold down Alt, you can repick your last color and fix that as needed. Now, the other part that I want to do is, now that that's green like that, I'm going to come in here to all these areas that I want lights to be in. So if some of these you don't want to have lights, that's fine. But I am going to fill that in. Okay. Down here. And over here. And this will be the last one. Okay. So this is going to be my green in there. Now the next thing is like color combo. So I'm going to do kind of like a black and gray. When you do gray, sometimes I like to switch to blue just because it makes it easier. So I want to do black but not completely black. So if I color this in, see how it's a nice dark color but it's not black. That's what we want to kind of go for here. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make the helmet predominantly black. Okay. And we're just going to start filling that in. Okay. Now not everything will be black. Some of the stuff will be gray, or maybe, and I stress maybe because I might just change my mind, a different color to go with. But for the most part, my helmet will be black. Okay, so you see how that selection is keeping our stuff inside the lines, which is what we want. Okay, now other things we want to color black. I'm going to do this tubing here and the front part of the chin. Okay, we also have, sorry, I'm just going to fill in that red. Remember the Alt key, let's switch to your color picker. Okay, so I have that nice and black. I'm also going to do this part of the helmet black. And just fill that in. Okay, and then this, leave that gray over there. Or maybe another color again. We'll figure it out as we go. Um, Now, some of these shoulder pieces. So let's get down in here and we'll make this black here. Okay, we'll make these parts that hold the rod in place. We'll make those black. Get this back part of the neck. Make that black as well. Okay. And then we got a rod piece here. And if you see, we did that back piece. We got that going back. So now I'm gonna do, we'll do this black. And there's no rhyme or reason for my colors right now. Just kind of getting everything set up, and then if there's something I want to change later, it's an easy fix because all we gotta do is use the fill bucket. Okay, so we just go around and finish that. Okay, let's make this strap over here black, or the shoulder connection piece. Okay, so we'll do that whole thing, that black color. And to increase your brush size, I forgot to tell you, the bracket keys right next to the letter P. If you press the one right next to the P, it'll get smaller. You press the one to the right of that, it gets bigger. And that's how you can adjust your brush size if needed. Okay, so we're just going to finish filling that in. Alright, I'm going to swap over here and do the same on this side, like that. Okay. Now this is an edge here, so it's all part of the same mechanism. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to use that gray. Okay, so I still want to be down in this blue. And we're going to use that middle gray, so if you just take it to the corner, we can just use that. So we'll just go around and fill those in. And again, real quick, the reason I'm using Sketchbook is, again, it is a free program that you can download and use. If you guys would prefer Photoshop, I do have that, but I was just trying to keep it in a way that everybody would have access to it. So if you would like some Photoshop videos, you can just let me know in the comments. I'll gladly do those. But for now, we're just going to keep on filling in our gray. Okay, and sometimes if you just hold the space bar and zoom out, you can get a good look at what you got going, whether it looks good or not. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch these parts with the lighting to gold, just to break it up a little bit. But that's completely up to you. If you like it gray, you can keep it gray. That's fine. Remember spacebar to zoom and to move around, pan around your image. I'm probably also going to do gold on the throat pieces too. Okay, so we have that. Come inside here. Increase my brush size a little bit. Like I said, it takes practice. Feel free to go through the brush library and play around when you get a chance if you're on your own time. I do have a video from earlier just kind of introducing Sketchbook if you just want to go back into my playlist. Um, it's in there. I might do a gold color for the rods on the neck, which I'll have to change that. Again, I'm just trying to break it up just so it's not like all gray. I mean, it's very possible to just have a suit that's all the same color if that's what you want. It's just that monotone. I just like adding colors and brightness to my pictures, so it'd be easier that way. Okay, fix that up. Come down here. And we'll fill that in as well. And then we'll get to the part of shading here in a minute once we're done coloring that in. Okay. Alright, so now that we have all that filled in, I'm going to come over here and we're going to go for kind of a gold color. So I'm just kind of going between this orange and yellow. Probably lean more towards the yellow on that, and we'll get that gold color. Okay, so now I can come in here and check the colors out. That might be a little too dark, so let's go right off the corner. See what that looks like. It's a little bit better. I think we'll go with that. And we'll just fill in those remaining pieces. Okay, I'm going to get these spots down in here. Go ahead and fill in this rod. Okay, and then remember I said I was going to do this back rod too. And then down into the neck piece. Okay, so we got that filled in. That just leaves us, if we look around real quick, we've got everything else covered. So that just leaves us with this bottom section. Just be careful not to bleed over. If you do, just use your color picker to knock it back. And one more. We can move on to the shading. Okay, so now I have all of my flats in here. So these are my base colors. Now we're going to start putting in shading. Now, if I turn on the eyeball, I can't see anything, right? So I need to move this now up above it. We can turn the opacity up to a point to where we can see our shadow lines in here. Or you could just turn it up all the way. Either way, it's going to work the same. But the first thing I want to do is get rid of this selection. So I'm going to hit Command D or Control D if you're on the PC. Okay. So I'm going to turn mine down a little bit, but again, I'm going to leave that up to you because you should be able to see it better when you zoom in. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to black. Okay. I'm going to create a new layer, hitting the plus button, and I'm going to call this shadows. And I'm going to set this to 82. Okay. Now, next thing I'm going to do is make sure I got my airbrush selected. I'm going to go to my selection tool and pick my lasso. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just trace around the edge. And see how that gives me a selection. Now, if you want to add more, like if I start selecting right now, it'll delete that. You want to come over here. This is plus, so this means to add, and this is negative. This will take it away. Okay. So I'm going to continue. Just going around, and it may seem a little tedious at first, but you'll see why we're doing it here in a minute. So see how that just kind of overlaps right in there? Okay, I'm going to come up and pick this shadow. Okay. Now one thing I will say about this over Photoshop is I love Sketchbook's selection tool compared to Photoshop. I wish it had this kind of control. It would be nice. But that's just a personal gripe and complaint. Okay, so everywhere that there is a shadow, I am just going to make my selections go around. Okay, so even on little things like the railing here on the bar, and you may be wondering, like, why am I just going through and selecting everything? Why haven't we drawn anything? Well, this is just the faster way to do it. If you just get everything in first. Now when you're doing this like kind of freehand and just kind of making up your own stuff as you go, well, that's when you can go a step at a time and kind of decide from there what you want. Okay, so we go around that way, come around and select, and I am just going to keep moving down. Now this whole area right here is shaded, so I'll just pick that right here underneath the chin. But yeah, Photoshop's version of this does not. I mean, this got a magnetic lasso too, and a lot of people like using it. I personally think it's a bit wonky at times. But this one gives you complete like drawing control over what you want to use. Okay. And then let's see, we got some back over here. And again, you're going to see why we're doing all this in a minute. Now, I do want to kind of ride close to this here. Just give a little extra depth so it's not just black. Okay. Now I'm going to ride up this edge. Alright. I got these sides here. Again, just base it off. If you need to darken it, just go back and adjust. Click on that layer and adjust what it is that you need to see on yours. Okay. But you should be able to see it fine. Okay, so see, now I messed up. So now I need to come in here and make sure that none of this is selected in my piece. So I don't want that area, and then I can just switch back to add. Okay, so all that is now wrapped around it like I want it, and I can continue to move on. Okay, so now I'm going to slowly work in this helmet shadow along with, you know, the rest of it as I go. So if you kind of see me switch back and forth, that is why. Some of this stuff, if it leaks over, you can just circle select that. But I am going to continue to move along. Okay, I'm going to use this here, go around. I'm going to stick really close to the edge right here. And select like that. Now, a lot of this in here. Okay, so we're going to kind of wrap this way and go around and get all of that right there. Okay, so all that will get shadow. I want to get this edge here, and we may change that later just depending on how our glows work out. Okay, I got this whole area right here that I want. I also want this little bit of edge right in here, and then this back part right in here. Okay, and we'll keep moving on. So let's come out here and get all that. We want this whole back side of the helmet here up to a point, so like right here, it's going to swing out and get all that. And then we can curve the front of the head here. Okay. And then I'm going to go back. So it's all just going to be based off your shading. So this is basically just for those of you who want to bring your drawn work into Sketchbook. You know, we can do other stuff where we just draw straight in Sketchbook and go from there, but we're just going to start off with something simple, just taking things you've already drawn and sprucing it up with that digital look. Okay, so we're almost done. We're just going to swing around front here and follow that back. Alright, so now if you look at what you have, we're all set up for shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the eyeball off on that, and this is selected. I'm going to pick my airbrush right here. If you don't see it, just simply skim down through your library and you will find it. Okay, and then you can drag it, like hold it and drag it up here to your basic. Okay, so I'm going to really increase this brush size up just so it covers more ground. Okay, so if I do that and hit Command D, this is what it looks like. It's got some shadow base on there, and that'll give it a little bit of a harder look. Now I'm going to spruce this up as big as it goes. Okay, and I'm going to really darken it back here at the back, and then lightly bring it up towards the front, hit Command D. I now have my shadows in place. Okay, you can adjust the opacity to make it as clear or as dark as you want. Okay, usually 82 works. It's usually what I use in like Photoshop, but we'll go with around 64. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is, you know, get our highlights going. Okay, so I can take this right now and go ahead and just delete that image. We don't need it anymore, it's gone. I'm not going to move my highlights up by making a new layer on the plus button, and we're just going to call this lights for now. I'm not going to do highlights yet, we're just going to call it lights. Okay, now we can use the same method, or you can just kind of free paint, but I can tell you right now that this is going to be too big. So if I come in there, see how much space that's taken up, really want to crank that thing down. So that's about 10. Looks about right. So now we gotta kind of choose our light source. So we're just gonna choose a regular, sun light, right? So we don't want pure white. We want to kind of take it back to this. So let's do this. Let's hit Alt and pick your red. And then what we'll do is we'll brighten that. You could go that way, right? You could come in here and brighten everything up if you wanted to. Okay. Or you can do like I was showing. You can just pick a regular light color. Okay. And we can go like this. And color it in. Now, while you're looking at this, you might be going, well, that is really bright. It is. So we can change that to an overlay. And look what that does. It just brightens up that area. Okay, so we can do the same thing throughout. You can kind of hit the light on some of these areas. More like the surface is facing upwards towards the sun. Okay. Now, if you don't like that overlay, you can pick through all these different colors. Alright. You can screen, color dodge, got all kinds of different layers on here. Okay, but you could leave it on normal and you could fade it down. Okay, so for this particular one, I'm going to leave mine on overlay, but I just wanted to show you that real quick. Okay. Now for this one, I want to kind of push more towards the white. Make sure you're on your airbrush. I want to kind of push towards the white here, so I'm going to lean more towards the edge away from the shadow. And you want to just kind of be careful. So if you need to zoom in, but you want to be careful you don't start, blowing out too much into your shadows. So if you need to, you can keep shrinking the brush size down. If you're wondering why we haven't touched the lights yet, it's because we're going to do something different with that. But we're just going to come through here and just kind of brighten certain areas up. Okay. Now a lot of the differences between this and Photoshop, and I'm just hitting up the edges of this throat piece here, is the airbrush is not quite as good. The way that it interprets certain things is not exactly the same. So it's not 100%, be all end all. Like if you could see my results from things I do in Photoshop compared to this, there's a massive difference. But as far as just making good art goes and how I like to use it, this is what we got. Okay, and we'll do more like painterly things later. So I want to kind of brighten this up and that green right there. Up on the gold, we'll hit this edge up here on top of the helmet. Front sides. Just those areas that we need to see. Okay. So now we have a little bit more brightness to it. So now I can take another layer, right? And this is why layers are important, because if I didn't like something, I can just turn it off, delete it, get rid of it. Alright, so this one we're going to call highlights. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back in here. I'm going to switch to white. Now I could come in here like this. and just airbrush me in a highlight. So that's nice and thick, right? But you can adjust it to however you need it. I'm going to shrink mine down so that I can get more of a streamlined highlight in here, right? I'm going to hit up these edges. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in and shrink in my brush, and I'm just going to hit up these edges right here. Okay, and some of these spots down near the shadow, I'm going to highlight. Okay, same thing here. I want to make sure that this comes off and reads like a glass container of some kind. So we can add those reflections there. Okay, we can add that in here. And just work your way around your image. If you kind of go over a little bit, you can shrink up and trim up what you need on there. Okay, so I'm just going to continue around and really hit up these edges on one of these front parts. Okay. And what this is going to allow is just to reflectivity on the metal. Okay, so if I zoom out and take a look at it, it's starting to pop a little bit more, right? And this is more of like a beginner's level. But, same practices apply. Hit these outside edges. And some colors it's a little harder to go over, that you might have to go over it several times for it to show up, and that's okay too. But it'll get there eventually, and you can always back out and look, see what you got, see how it's looking, right? So I'm going to come hit up these edges here. And just keep working my way around. And if you see a spot that's better suited for a highlight, by all means, hit that up and give it a spotlight. Okay, I'll kind of cut back a little bit on that one. Wrong brush. Let's go back. And a little bit, of remembrance is, less is more. We don't have to hit up every single area. It's completely okay if you don't. It should still look good. You're done with it. Knock that back some. Just make sure that you're going back to that airbrush. And it's just because it's like a softer line. Don't get me wrong, you can use a regular brush. It's just, it'll be more of a hard line than a soft line, which, it can still turn out to look good. Again, it just depends on your personal preference and what you like. So I'm going to come over here. Add in a few extra on that. And for the most part, it should do it for that. Okay, now we are going to try something. We're going to go below our highlights. Okay. I'm going to be honest, I'm still trying to perfect the glowing effect in here, but we'll give it a go. Okay, so I'm going to pick like that same green and go in here and we'll do like a soft glow. I'm going to keep my airbrush, right? And what I want to do is paint that in. Give me a nice glow in there. And then what I can do is I can turn that opacity down. Okay, and I can come in here and do the same thing. And just put our glows inside of here. They'll be nice and soft. Okay. I'm only doing it for those areas that have the lights on them. So that's another feature that Photoshop has that's really good, is they just have a glow effect that you can put on here. Now there is a glow effects brush in here. Alright, so if I take this and I shrink that up, let's just add a new layer. I'm going to turn that one off and just leave this one normal. So like if I come in here, see how it's like really harsh? So I'm not really sure, you know, what that was supposed to be, but I don't personally like it myself, but maybe you can get it to work. Come up here. Now if you wanted to, that's my stressor. There is, if you wanted to, you could come in here. I see how that glow brush adds that on the outside, but if you wanted to, you come back to your airbrush here. You could try and get a red Q glow on here. Be very subtle but noticeable. Okay, so I could back out and do that. And then what we can do is we can take our image, right? I could take this crop tool and delete that. I want to do that. So you want to be very careful, because once you crop, it's kind of stuck that way. So I'm just going to draw out this rectangular shape and leave that down. And then what we can do is I'm going to adjust the size of this. I'm just going to shrink the layers down and go down the very bottom layer. Okay, I can add a new one. I'm going to pull this one up above it, and this will just be our background. Okay, so I'm going to take like this conceptual brush and do like this deep purple, and I can go behind it, and what that'll help do is let you see how much it has gone over, right? So if I come over to my highlights now and I take my eraser, I can get these really loose edges. And again, your conceptual brush is just down under art on your brush menu, and you can just drag that up. Okay, so that gets rid of some of that. I'm going to switch back to my background. I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Go for a darker color here. And I just like this brush just for the texture purposes of it. You can choose to use whatever brush you want, a splatter brush. It's up to you. I'm going to work my way up. Right, and then I can kind of come in here, this white, and just stick close to the edge of my image. And you can do this however you want. And I'll do white right underneath. Okay, I can take this blending brush here if I want to. And we can blend it all together. Kind of give it like a nice little hue and a glow. Okay, leave that texture. Get that in the background. And boom, got ourselves a nice little image here, okay? So, that's gonna do it for our little lesson. Thank you for stopping by. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Have something specific you want to learn about Photoshop or Sketchbook, again, please leave it in the comments down below. Other than that, keep sketching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.